You just take longhand notes on it. If not, just kind of sit back and absorb. But when we're looking at kind of the science of speed, my PowerPoint has a lot of videos in it. We can kind of look at what's called a velocity profile. So we'll start here, and then we'll kind of work our way backwards. We look at the NFL Combine, which is my favorite event because we get it out of the track setting and into like a team sport setting, football players obviously, and yet we have some guys who can really run. So if we look at distance here on the x-axis and velocity on the y-axis, we notice that guys start to speed up really early in the race. That's what we're going to call an acceleration phase, and then they kind of transition here, and then they get into their top speed. Does that make sense to everybody? Is that kind of intuitive, right? So if we look at it just generally speaking as like a percentage of top speed, first 5 to 10 yards or meters, we'll use those interchangeably. People are like leaning in, right? Leaning in, pushing back, and they're really getting up to speed fast. Then they kind of gradually rise up, and by the time they're at 20 or 30 yards, they're basically in an upright body position. So we want to keep that in mind, okay? Not all athletes get into that kind of top speed mechanics. I would argue that our basketball players never really get into like an upright top speed sprinting form, but we'll talk about why it's still important regardless of who you're coaching, okay? If we look at like an Olympic sprint, it's a little bit different, but it's kind of a good way to just have a background of what you're watching here. So these are obviously some of the fastest guys in the world. This is the one race that Usain Bolt ever lost at the end of his career. We look at kind of a velocity profile, the 100-meter dash. We see the same sort of pattern. They're really accelerating for the first 20, 30 meters or so, and then by about 30 meters, they're at basically top speed. So when you watch an athlete run, just kind of have a general idea of these phases, okay? First 5 to 10 yards, initial acceleration, they're overcoming inertia. Then the next 5 to 10 yards are kind of transitioning upright. And then by 20 to 30 yards, they're totally upright. And by 30 meters, most people are at close to top speed. So if we look at kind of like a summary, and this is one of our own sprinters last year, okay? We can see that for the first couple of steps, the foot is on the ground longer. What I mean by ground contact time is how long is the foot pushing on the ground? How long is the foot on and off the ground? When you accelerate, the foot stays on the ground a relatively long time. Because the body is angled forward, there's not much time in the air. So you're on the ground a long time, you're not much time in the air, and obviously you're leaning forward. Why do you lean forward? Just kind of common sense. Oh, let's see, I don't know your name. What's your name?
Shane.
Shane, why do you lean forward?
Just get your weight going.
Get your weight going forward. Yeah, you got to overcome inertia, so that's one thing. Why else? What's your name? Allie, I'll forget that in 2 seconds. Why else do you lean forward? Aerodynamic? You're not wrong, but there's probably a little bit of a better reason. What's your name and what's your guess? Oh, the ever popular, that's what she said. Yes, what do you got? All right, let me rephrase the question. Maddie, to jump up, which way do you push? To jump up, which way do you push? Down. To jump up, you push down, right? What's your name in the Penn State football? If I'm Saquon Barkley and I'm trying to go left, which way do I push? Right. Right, so it's a little bit of Newton's laws. If I want to jump up, I got to push down. If I'm trying to go left, I got to push right. So if I'm trying to go forward, I got to lean in and push back. Right? Does that make sense to everybody? So you lean in, you push back. All right, from about 10 to 15 yards, your body starts to become upright. And then at about 15 to 20 yards, you're almost totally upright, as we'll watch this guy do. He was one of the fastest guys ever to run at Westchester. Okay? And this is why it's really important to think about. The body's upright, so most of the force is going down into the ground. That's actually a good thing. Okay? The foot's on the ground a really short amount of time, the body's upright, and most of the force is going down. Now, take out your cell phones. I know for years and years and years you've been told in class to put away your cell phones, but take out your cell phones. Take out the stopwatch, and I want you to start and stop it as fast as you can. Let's have a little competition. Start and stop it with one finger as fast as you can. Let's see what we get. My man in a Westchester hat and a Westchester shirt. What do you got? Because I feel like you're about to fall asleep on me, so I got to wake you up. What's that?
0.16.
Oh, that's horrible. You need to practice.
Yeah.
What do you got?
I got
0.13. What do you got? 0.1. Oh, even worse than him. What do you got?
Back up 0.19.
0.19. Man. Please, someone help me out. What do you got? 0.15, that's better in a gray sweatshirt.
0.13.
0.13, that's a little better. Here's why we're doing it.
I have 0.8.
0.8?
Yeah, not 08, 0.8.
0.80. Oh, done. Your grade is decreasing. Think about this. This is why we're doing it. Look at this time. The time that the runner's foot is on the ground is 0.08 to 0.10. So literally faster than you can click your stopwatch. Faster than a blink of an eye, faster than you can click your stopwatch. It's incredibly fast, and there's a lot of force going down to the ground, so we'll talk about that. Last point on this slide, okay? The athlete's upright by 20 yards. Typically, this is just like a background nugget. If you watch the Olympics, you might hear the commentators say, well, the sprinters aren't really hitting peak speed for 40 to 70 meters into the 100-meter dash. For you guys and the athletes that you're going to coach as physical educators or as sport coaches, the runners are typically upright and into their top speed mechanics by 20 yards. So how long is a basketball court? 94 feet?
Yeah.
So that's like roughly 30 yards. Does that make sense? So you can coach start and acceleration and top speed within the framework of a singular basketball court. Everybody with me there? Because you're getting into top speed mechanics 2/3 of the way. By the time you hit the opposite free throw line on a basketball court, you're into your top speed mechanics. So all you need is one court to really train some of this stuff. Obviously, if you have a field or a track, even better. Okay? All right, let's look at some forces during acceleration. So, I'm not sure if you guys have had a biomechanics class or something equivalent, but the bottom line is good old Isaac Newton here, his 3 laws of motion, really has set the framework for sports science all the way since the late 1600s. We really haven't progressed that much in over 350 years. It's kind of sad, but good old Isaac Newton said in his second law, force equals mass times acceleration. So you divide through by mass, a little 7th grade algebra here, you get force divided by mass equals acceleration. So this is the key point. The more force you can apply relative to how much you weigh, the better you're going to be able to move, essentially. That could be acceleration, that could be top speed, that could be change of direction. Okay? So what are some training exercises that you might do to be able to increase force application? You two ladies can't answer. What are some training exercises you might do in a weight room, on a track, whatever, that you might do to improve how much force you can apply? Justin? Yeah, that's close. Hang cleans, deadlifts, great answers. What else? Justin? Shame. I
Close.
do that with my own class. It's like 10 weeks into the semester. I still don't know. Anyone seen the Ted, the movie Ted, where he's like, Brittany Lynn, Jamie Lynn, Jamie Lynn, I'm distance with it. Yeah, Shane? Squats, deadlifts, cleans, power snatch, anything like that. Plyometrics, box jumps, or repeated hurdle jumps. These are all force application exercises. Well, it's important that you know why you're doing them. Right? It all comes back to this. Anyone ever notice that there's a really good relationship between people who can jump and people who can run? Typically, people who can jump, whether it's up or out or whatever, can really, really accelerate. Well, it comes back to Newton's law. So the more force you can apply relative to your mass, the better you are as an athlete. And for those of us that aren't that interested in straight ahead speed, maybe you see yourself coaching tennis or something that's more lateral, the same rules apply. The more force you can apply relative to your body weight, the quicker you're going to be side to side. Right? So that's always our goal from a training context. It's also our goal from a speed mechanics standpoint. So the ability to apply large amounts of force at the right angles. All right, so let's look at the acceleration phase. So athlete applies force down and back, right? So if you're looking at me from the side, basically I'm winding up here, pushing down and back. Whoa. Oh, man, I ruined this. Dr. Kramer, my technology's been failing me lately.
Well, it's a good thing I'm not doing a pure observation.
You know that the first time I ever got evaluated by Dr. Fry, my technology hadn't failed the entire semester. So of course, what happens? Technology totally craps out. I have to shut down my computer. We have to move to another room. I have to move the entire thing. All right, you apply force down and back. This has a vertical force, so part of that's going down and part of it's going back. Okay? So has anyone, if you're not at Jake's Bar on Thursday night, has anyone ever seen somebody sprint and just fall flat on their face? Does it, you have? Gosh, okay. I take it he wasn't at Jake's Bar on Thursday night. All right. So does it really happen? Not that much, right? Most of the time we have a pretty easy time applying enough force down into the ground. But what this means is, whoever has the most force left over, after applying enough force down, will be able to push back harder. Let me rephrase this another way. Everyone knows what linemen look like on a football team. They're 300 pounds, right? Are those guys typically very fast? Not to pick on linemen, but they're not. They can't accelerate that well. Why not? Well, most of their force has to go just into supporting their body weight. They weigh more than, let's say, a 160-pound running back, okay, or wide receiver. So more of their force has to go here, so they have less force reserve to push back with. Does that make sense? Everybody with me there? Again, stronger you are relative to your body mass, the faster you're being. All right, last thing on kind of the science of acceleration, because I know at 9:15 on a Monday morning, it's not the most exciting thing to listen to, but it's important. So if I was to do a change of direction stop, everyone just, oh, hell, get up on the table. Ah. So Kramer, these tables bend underneath my weight more and more. I get up in class all the time.
I'll make sure I don't go up on the table then.
Okay, so if I was going to do a sprint into a stop, it would look something like this, and at the end of the stop, I would have to put my foot out in front of me to put on the brakes. Is everybody with me there? So when my foot is doing that, and my center of mass is back here, what's the effect in the gray sweatshirt, because you're also falling asleep?
I don't know.
Okay, I'll ask you again. I'll give you some stall time. Ready? What's your name?
Jake.
Jake. All right, Jake. From State Farm. If I put my foot out in front of my center of mass, like that, to come to a stop, am I stepping on a gas pedal or am I stepping on the brakes?
Brakes.
Right. My foot goes out in front of my center of mass, I'm stepping on the brakes. Okay? So
Remember
Jake,
that.
What's that?
Remember that.
So, if I have my center of mass out in front of my foot, am I stepping on the gas or stepping on the brakes?
The gas, you're
Right.
gonna fall.
So if the foot is in front of the center of mass, you're stepping on the gas. If the foot's behind, you're stepping on the gas. If the foot's in front, you're stepping on the brakes. Keep this in mind. So every running cycle has a point where the foot lands in front, slight braking, and then as you translate forward, a propulsive, where you're stepping on the gas and speeding up again. Does that make sense? Everybody with me? All right, so golden slipper, if we're trying to accelerate, what do we want to do? A lot of this, where you're slowing down, or a lot of this, where you're speeding up? The second one. You want to have more acceleration or propulsion forces than you do braking forces. Everybody with me there? So this is where we start to get into the applied. So when you're watching your athlete, when you're starting to teach running mechanics to a youth or a high school athlete or whatever, do you want to see them reaching way out in front of them because they feel like that lengthens their stride? What you want to see them do is try to push and stab the ground behind them. Does that make sense? You want that foot to land underneath them as much as possible so that they can push. We never want to reach way out here. Everybody with me? What else is potentially at risk for injuries? What's your name with the Nike hat?
Jeff.
If I have to reach out here, think muscles now, which muscle group, and then pull my entire body weight over my foot, what do you think, what muscle group could be at risk for an injury, to strain a muscle, pull a muscle? Hip, possibly, maybe a glute max. Hamstring. So when you land like this, you're putting a lot of strain on your hamstring. So the more you land out in front of you, the more likely your athlete is to strain a hamstring. Does that make sense? Everybody with me there? Okay, so this is going to happen to a certain degree, but we want to limit where that is. All right. So to speed up, i.e. to increase our velocity or accelerate, we want to increase our propulsive forces, that's this, and decrease our braking forces, that's this, as much as possible. Everybody with me? Okay, I'm going to skip through this. A little bit more sciencey from another talk. Good, let's get into it. So this is what you need to look for if you're coaching. And guys, I know it's 9:30 on a Monday, right? But if you can't coach running mechanics, as Kramer said at the beginning of class, like you are missing a huge element of what you need to be able to teach at whatever level you're working for. I'll also give you one other side motivating factor. I get paid pretty lucratively, a lot of money during summer to be able to teach running mechanics, right? Parents just come up and say, hey, I'll pay $100 an hour or whatever to work with my kid. It is a great way to make money because no one knows how to teach it, aside from maybe some track and sport performance coaches. So whatever you see yourself doing, I think it's necessary to be able to teach it to your athletes. And oh, by the way, it's a differentiating skill set if you know how to teach it. Does that make sense? I always find when my students are motivated in the morning that the whole money talk always works. Acceleration techniques, specifically what are we looking for? Okay? So we want to see, I'm going to go into a couple of things. Forward body lean, we've already talked about that. Think center of mass is just here, right? Right around your belly button. Stance foot is just the foot that's on the ground. So we got to lean in and push. I don't know if you've ever watched a youth athlete or maybe someone that is on your team or whatever, but we don't want to just spin the wheel like the road runner that's turning over really fast. A lot of times you'll see an athlete that has great quote-unquote turnover that can spin the wheels, but they don't cover any ground. Again, speed is distance divided by time. So if you cover no distance, you have no speed. So we want big, powerful pushes. And we want kind of like big piston-like or big scissor-like actions. So let's take one more look at this. Okay? So you can think, a great way to think about it is kind of like 3 P's of acceleration. Great posture, big pushes back, and then big punches forward. Has anyone ever seen an athlete try to accelerate and they lean in and really bend at the waist? They've been taught that they want to run low. Try to avoid coaching the cue run low during acceleration. The angle that your body comes out at will be a result of how hard you push down and back. So just teach push down and back as opposed to run low. We want to see kind of this type of straight line, head to heel, strong as steel, so to speak. Okay? Next thing we should see, we've already talked about this, but basically the foot should land behind the center of mass early on, or at least the goal. That's the goal. Now, how would you cue this? Because so much of what you guys do as a physical educator, right, is communicating, is talking to your athlete, your student, whatever. So when I work with my sprinters, what I say, hey Tyrell, what I want you to do is make sure that your stance foot lands behind the center of mass so that you can push back and get a lot of propulsive forces. Like what would happen, Katie, if I told Tyrell to do that to effectively sprint? If I gave him that cue? He'd be like, WTF are you talking about, right? And he would look at me like I have 3 heads. So what's a better way to say that? What do you think? How would you say that? You're trying to get the person to land with their foot behind their hips, basically. Something like that. Okay, what else? Shane, how else could you phrase it? Lean forward, maybe. Saquon? Anyone? Lean forward. All right. I don't expect you to know the answers now, but it is something we need to think about. Maybe, although you don't want to have smaller strides, you just don't want to overstride. I don't expect you to know the answers, but here's what I'm getting at. To be able to coach it effectively, you've got to be able to cue it effectively. Does that make sense? It's not enough to know the science. When I was getting my master's degree, I started to get all, I'm in love with the biomechanics, with the science. And I had a coaching friend come up to me and he said, Ken, you've become a terrible coach. As I was learning more and more knowledge, he goes, your cues are so long, they're so scientific, that the athletes have no idea what you're talking about. And you're confusing them. A little bit of paralysis by analysis. Does that make sense? So all this stuff is great, but you also have to know to cue it. So what does Tyrell end up going with? Well, Tyrell, I want you to punch the ground or stab behind you. He goes, Coach, that's what makes sense. I like thinking about stab behind me. Something that's, for a cueing standpoint, short, stab behind you. That's 3 words. Violent, like we need the wording to match what he's trying to do. Sprinting / acceleration is an aggressive action. We need the cueing to be aggressive, right? Stab behind you. And basically, what we would term externally based. So we talk about this in motor learning class. I'm not referring to a body part, I'm referring to the environment, that sort of thing. Yes, Dr. Kramer?
You're teaching 5th graders.
Yeah, maybe not stab. But
Punch.
Punch. Right, well, it's where you guys got to think about it. I don't work with 5th graders, but you guys will. So maybe that's where you gotta come up with your old set of cues. Last point on this, to Dr. Kramer's point, because your cues have to be audience specific. Really, you guys know what a Romanian deadlift exercise is? Just this thing here, right? When I was working in a high school setting, I was working in an all-boys school. It's like gorilla chest and twerk, right? It's a great cue to get kind of a Romanian deadlift, but if I'm trying to teach my Nana that, well, maybe not so good, right? So again, make your cues athlete specific.
I would like to see your Nana do it.
Gross. All right, next on acceleration. So we should see this progressive rise. Think jet plane taking off, not helicopter taking off. Does everyone understand that analogy? Right? Analogies are a great way to cue. People learn, whether it's on the court or track or whether it's in the classroom, people learn by analogies. How they take one piece of information that they already know and relate it to another piece of information that they're trying to learn. Jet plane, gradually taking off, not helicopter going straight up, right? So let's review real quick, because I know this is all new, but what are we looking for in acceleration? That's really what it comes down to for you guys as physical educators. What are you looking for good acceleration technique? Maddie, I'm going to put you on the spot. Just give me one thing. One of those answers is already on the board. Give me one thing you're looking for.
Rise body.
Yeah, gradual rise of the body. That's a great answer.
Wow.
Let's say in the pink, I don't know your name. What's your name?
Carolyn.
Carolyn. Give me another thing. So Maddie's already said like a gradual rise. What's another thing that we're looking for?
Shin angles.
Wow, that's good memory. What does that mean though? That's good. You're highly literate, which is a good thing.
I don't know.
I mean, if they can get a degree without being literate, we're in trouble, right? No, think about what did we just talk about 5 minutes ago? What's another thing you want to look for?
Running.
When they're accelerating, specifically, we kind of talked about 3 or 4 things. Saquon's going to help you out in a minute, but I'm not letting you off the hook that easy.
Sagging the ground.
Okay, so striking behind the center of mass. To use technical terms, we talked about stabbing and punching the ground. Very good. Hey.
So like air time versus your time with your feet on the ground.
Oh, well, that's really interesting. Yeah, so that actually was as well above and beyond what I was looking for, but you're right. So if you progressively rise, you'll go from longer ground contact times to shorter ground contact times. That's kind of how we use music and rhythm to teach our sprinters. And you'll progressively get longer in the air. My man in the blue with the 76ers jersey. By the way, did they clinch the 3 seed yet?
Yes.
They did?
Last night.
Lost. The Celtics
All
lost.
right, that's good, because the Celtics are going to be a bad matchup for them. Anyways, what are we talking about? Yeah, I need one more point. So give me another point before Saquon helps you out here. Knowing how to cue, that's fine, but give me, I mean, you're not wrong, but give me specifics. Gradual rise, right, which comes with the right ratio of ground contact and flight time, right? We said stabbing behind you, i.e. not reaching. Give me another one.
Like pushing and punching the ground.
Big pushes, right. Big pushes and punches, and we shouldn't see you bent over at the waist. So on Wednesday, we're going to do some drills, and Maddie and Katie probably remember these, but where we remember those at all, right? Where we work on how to teach that, right? Because it's one thing to know the science, it's another thing to know what you're looking for, but the third part of that is how do I get my athletes in the right position to understand what I'm looking for? So we'll do some things on Wednesday that get us in the right position to understand those angles. All right. Save my PowerPoint. We'll continue to work for, we only got another 10 minutes. So what about top speeds? Does it even matter for most athletes? You could make a strong argument that for almost everybody but track and field athletes, top speed isn't that important. But I'm going to quickly go through 3 reasons why it is. So a lot of game-breaking plays, not in track and field, but in team sports, rely on top speed. This is just a few clips. I'm not going to let this all play all the way through in the essence of time. Okay, but top speed's hugely important for the finishing part of a lot of team sport runs. Who's that, Dr. Kramer? You might be the only person who knows it here.
That is Bo Jackson.
That is Bo Jackson, the most
Greatest
athlete of all time.
I think he is the greatest athlete of all time.
I would agree. I'm going to skip through this slide, but the big picture bottom line of this slide is as follows. Top speed is your ceiling. So the faster your top speed, the faster you will accelerate as well. Does that make sense? Even if I'm working with a basketball player who primarily deals with acceleration and change of direction, they almost never hit top speed in a game. But top speed's the ceiling. So if I can raise that ceiling, everything else comes with it. Does that big picture, bottom line, make sense? It all comes down to force production. Their acceleration will get better. And then this is a huge one, which I would really hope you guys take to heart. Top speed sprinting is a great training tool. So in the sports medicine community, a lot of people are viewing it as a vaccine, quote unquote, for soft tissue injuries, because you have to apply a lot of force in a little amount of time. It is a higher rate of force application than anything you can do in a weight room, any plyometric you can do, that sort of thing. It's a great way to train your athlete or client. I got asked the question the other day, how would I train a 5th or 6th grader to improve their top speed? I'd say just run at top speed. Do a lot of just top speed sprints with full recovery. It in and of itself is a great training tool. You have to apply the most force in the shortest amount of time. All right, so let's get through maybe 5 or 6 more slides here on upright running mechanics. This is the lab where I did my PhD. It's the world's fastest treadmill. It also had a force plate in it, which is like a fancy scale that measures how much force is being put down into the ground. This is the world treadmill record, if you can believe it. Those sort of things exist. This guy's running it about 26.5 miles an hour. So think about that when you drive your car. So he'd be running right next to you. Yeah, it's pretty incredible. Just for a few seconds, obviously, but pretty incredible. Okay, so again, a little bit of the science of it. The faster you run, the shorter your foot is on and off the ground, or the quicker your foot is on and off the ground. So if you're going for a nice easy jog, your foot's on and off the ground in about a quarter of a second. The faster you go, the quicker it has to get on and off the ground. But because you always have to apply enough force down to support your body weight up, if your foot is on and off the ground faster, you have to apply more force down when it's on the ground. I'm going to say that one more time. The quicker you go, the quicker your foot's on and off the ground, but you always have to push down hard enough to get your body back up. No one likes to trip and fall. We don't let ourselves do it. So it leads to this sort of relationship. The faster you go, the more force you have to apply relative to body weight. It's a pretty linear relationship. If I take a slowpoke like Peter Griffin, he's applying about 360 pounds of force, assuming he weighs 200 pounds. NFL combine athlete, maybe 420 pounds, elite sprinter, 480 pounds. So the big picture bottom line comes back to Newton's laws. There's a reason why this guy isn't very fast. He can apply a lot of force, but he's got a lot of mass, no good. He doesn't have a lot of mass, but he can't apply force, no good. Does anyone in the room who know who this guy is? Who's not Dr. Kramer? Yeah, what do you got?
Jesse Owens.
Oh, good guess, but no. Carl Lewis, other greatest track and field athlete.
From New Jersey, of course.
There you go. He's a cheater, though. So, contact time shorter, vertical force faster. So, what this leads us to is the technique. I'm going to skip this slide in the essence of time, but this is the technique that we're looking for. Maybe if the videos play. Here we go. So, this is a video from about 6 or 7 years ago. I've aged horribly. Every time I show this slide, I'm like, man, Kramer, what happened to me? That's from 2012.
I don't approach that topic.
All right, so one of these guys is an Olympic sprinter, literally raced against Usain Bolt in 2008. The other guy's a Division I lacrosse player, really fast, but has terrible mechanics. Shane, which one is which? Toughest question of the day.
I'll say the guy on the left.
Wow, you're a freaking genius, Shane. This guy's the Olympic sprinter, this guy's the lacrosse athlete. So what do we notice? What are the difference in mechanics? Give me one thing.
Oh, his hands.
Oh, his hands are awful. Now, I must say, in full transparency, I picked these 2 videos because they are the 2 biggest contrasts in running mechanics you will ever see. But yeah, I mean, the arm action's horrendous here. Okay, give me another. What do you got, Katie?
He's a lot more upright.
Yeah, great point. Probably first and foremost, he's a lot more upright with his posture. Manny, what do you got? Same thing, ever popular, that's what she said. Yes, what do you got, Saquon?
His foot contact, the left side's foot contact.
Yeah, this guy is on and off the ground faster than that guy and also applying more force. Yes, in the back? Yeah. What do you got? I know you weren't raising your hand, I'm just picking on you.
That's a big one.
Yes, in the black sweatshirt, she's gonna help you out.
His right leg like kicks his butt.
Yeah, he's kicking his butt back here. His foot's taking this big loopy backswing. Okay, so let's go over a few things. Now, this applies to teaching top speed mechanics, but here's the big picture. A lot of these things apply to general running mechanics. Okay? Not all of them apply to distance running, but some of them do. Also, this is a second big thing. Who here may work with somebody who's a distance runner at some point in the future? Maybe? Anyone? You'd be surprised. I've worked with sprint athletes, but I've worked with a few distance just because they're interested in speed training for the end of their 5K or whatever. Teaching people how to sprint at top speed is a skill that translates way more than you think. It'll lead to better distance running mechanics. So keep these things in mind. Let's work as a checklist from the top down, because there's a lot to look at, right? There's a lot of differences. Here's how I want you to evaluate top speed mechanics. Look from the top down. So posture, to Katie's point, this guy is totally upright. Chest is barely leaning forward. His hips are like this. Everyone take your index fingers and feel what's called your ASIS, right? Anterior, superior, iliac spine. That should be pointed forward as the guy on the left. The guy on the right, he's sticking his booty out and those hip bones are pointed down. Everybody see that? Okay, so we want chest upright and what we call pelvis as like forward. So this guy, if you were to draw a straight line down, what's really interesting, he has what we call backside swing. The thigh doesn't go really back behind his body at all. Does everyone understand what I'm talking about there? Okay. What about this guy, Nike hat? What's going on here? Is this thigh, if I draw a straight line down, is this thigh going back behind it? Right. So, again, think top down. If I'm trying to, well, let me pause real quick. Shane's a pretty big guy. If I was to punch Shane,
Oh,
I
don't
would
don't
really
do
probably
that.
need to sucker punch him and then sprint my fastest out the door. So he
I
can
tried
kick my
that.
ass.
It didn't work
so
out
I wouldn't
well.
do that because he could probably beat me up and I'd get fired. But if I was trying to punch Shane, how would I do it? Would I wind up from like 2 inches away with a limp wrist and punch with my fingertip? That hurt. This is kind of annoying. Am I applying a lot of force, Shane? So if the whole goal of running is force application, what do I need to do, Saquon? Punch from here with a limp wrist and my fingertips? I need to wind up, keep my wrist cocked, punch with a lot of surface area. Ready? Boom! Jab. So it's Bruce Lee type of force application, not Arnold Schwarzenegger type of force application. Does everyone understand that analogy? The force is coming from the motion, not from just like pure weight and strength when we talk about top speed. But if I need to get my limb up in front of me to apply force, what can't happen in the gray sweatshirt who's still about to fall asleep?
What can happen?
Yeah, what can't, if my leg's way back here, can I get it up here?
No, you'll have no force.
Right. So the checklist is, I can't have it swing back far behind me so that I can get it way up in front of me. And once I get it way up in front of me, now I can attack the ground, as opposed to this guy here. Leg goes way far behind, can't get it far up in front of him, he's punching from here. The guy on the left is punching from here. Does that analogy make sense? Okay? And then the last thing is, and we only have 1 minute left in class, I won't keep you late. So this guy is really stiff through ground contact, whereas this guy collapses. What do I mean by that? What does a stiff ground contact mean? Any guesses? Yeah, Saquon.
Your right foot is like
Maybe. What else? Any other guesses? We're out of here on this, guys, as soon as we get this right. Yeah, he's turned out a little bit. Think of this. This athlete is like mushing. It's like, ugh. And he mushes, he collapses. Anyone know what like a deflated beach ball looks like? If you drop that on the ground, what happens? It just mushes onto the ground, to use a visual. This guy's like a rubber bouncy ball. Boing, right? It's stiff on ground contact. So we need to attack from above and be stiff to apply a lot of force. So last 10 seconds of class, when we go to top speed drills on Wednesday, everything we do is going to be with the left side panel in mind. Good posture, keeping everything in front of us, attacking the ground, stiff ground contact. Does that make sense to everybody? So we'll work on Wednesday acceleration mechanics first, then top speed. As Dr. Kramer already said, come ready to work. Okay, the class last year, I'm not going to kill you with conditioning or anything, but the class last year wasn't like really ready to move. We will be moving. Okay? All right, thank you. See you later.